Welcome everyone to the first ever Ideate speaker session for Developer Student Club at the University of Melbourne. My name is Zakaria and I am the DSC lead. We will be starting around 1:05, but until then we have some quick questions for us to get to know the audience better. So if you could quickly answer them, that would be great. So the first question is, which city are you joining us from? And for that, we'll be sending a link in the chat where you can enter where you're joining us from. And I'll just share screen to view the answers. So if you go to this link and just enter where you're joining from, that would be great. There was some restrictions on the website. I changed it. You should be able to visit it now. Cool. Also, people phone member, which is great. So. Cool, we got someone from Sydney as well. Represent, where is this from? Wow.
I'd like to know what represent is.
Yeah, and gone, Sai, is this? Cool. So it seems like most of the people are from Melbourne, which is great to see as well, but there's lots of diversity. So thanks everyone for joining, wherever they're joining us from. That was just one quick question, and we'll just begin with the event. So thanks everyone for answering that question. It really gave us a better idea of what our audience is like today, and we can adjust accordingly. So just some quick things to know before we start. We do have a poll EV set up. People who aren't familiar with poll EV, you can basically add your questions over there. And if anyone has any similar questions, they can upvote it so we know more people want that question to be answered. We have 10 questions that we'll be asking our panelists today. And after the first 5 questions, we will check poll EV and look at the top 2 questions and then ask our panelists. At the end of the 1 hour mark, we will be choosing 2 resumes from the people who did submit, and our panelists will be analyzing what is well done and what isn't. And the 2 resumes chosen will be given $25 Uber Eats gift cards, and then wrapping it all up with a final Q&A. Now the part you have all been waiting for, the introduction of the speakers. Now our first panelist, he shows us that opportunities don't just come to you, you have to go find them. Just in his 2nd year, and he has inspired so many people, including me. From the commencement of his uni life, he has always searched for opportunities to grow. This person has hosted workshops for Microsoft, hosted workshops on ethical hacking for his club at uni. And you know what's most exciting? This person is working on a real life project, which is a pathfinding algorithm for the Mars rover. How cool is that? Imagine knowing your work is going to space and not just to your tutor. This guy is cool, he's always keen, and he's the king of coding. Can we all give it up for Cave Asin?
Thank you, Zakaria. I should definitely update my LinkedIn bio to what you said. Sounds more. Thanks. Great to meet everyone. Looking forward to the event. And yeah.
Thank you, Cave. In case everyone doesn't know, there's like a reactions button at the bottom. If you don't want to unmute and do clapping, you can always do virtual clapping in the Zoom sessions. It will be great to hear. And now for our second panelist, which is a tough one to put into words. Her dreams and ambitions are much greater than that of a normal kid. Ever since 2017, she has done about 10 internship roles, including the most recent one at Google. And you know what she did at Google? She worked on Google Maps. Again, how astonishing. She's obsessed with technology, and you won't believe this, but she started teaching calculus and computer science when she was just 12. You may be wondering what I was doing when I was 12. I was just playing Super Mario like most kids. But she's agile, she's super active, and she loves algorithms. Can we all give it up for Aisha?
Oh my God. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I should update my LinkedIn bio too, like Kaiv.
Thank you, Aisha. And now finally, our last panelist for today is the most senior of all with the most experience. This man has done so much for students. He may have started off with just tutoring, but along the way, he has always been working to improve himself. His amazing timetable optimization tool, Look Ahead, aimed at helping students make the most out of the semester, has been used over 50,000 times. I have so much respect for him, and he was my head tutor last semester. Gotta say, his tutors were certainly the best. He is resilient, he is rare, and he is robust. Give it up for Rohil.
Thank you very much, Zakaria. I love those 3 descriptive words. Keen to share my knowledge with everyone here.
Great, thank you.
How long did it take Zakaria to match the words with the names, you know?
I'm really creative, so it took me like about 5 minutes for each person.
Yeah. Great job.
Thank you. So with that said, I'll be passing it on to Sanjog, who will be starting with the questions. So let's go, Sanjog.
Yeah, thank you, Zach, for that amazing introduction. So let's get started with the first part of this event. Now I'll be asking questions to the panelist members about how to put forth a strong application and everything to do within the resume. We'll follow this up with Apolli V and Pratyush with asking questions about everything to do outside the resume. So let's start off by talking about grades, everybody's favorite topic. How important are grades and what impact do they have when you apply for internships? As an ex-head tutor, I believe Rohil can provide valuable insight for this question.
Yeah, definitely. So one key thing to realize about the recruitment process is recruiters don't just look for smart people. And in fact, your grades don't have to be very stellar at all to get great jobs at great companies. In fact, just before Kaif and Aisha and I were talking about how none of us even put our WAMs on our resumes when we were applying for jobs. That's how much we knew, and recruiters didn't care about our grades. And I could tell you now, I was doing mechatronics engineering before I was doing computer science as my major, and that really tanked my WAM. And so it's much lower than many people would think it would be. And on top of grades and your ability to actually do whatever you're applying for, recruiters look more for a well-rounded applicant than just someone who's smart or can, code up a breadth first search in under a minute. So that's definitely, I don't think they're very important at all. As long as you are, maybe above a 65%, even during my application process, no recruiter has really asked me about my grades at all. So yeah, I think Aisha and Kaif can put more insight into that.
Mm-hmm. Aisha, do you want to go first?
I think Roho captured it pretty well. But do you have anything to add, Kaif?
This might be based on companies, but some companies even don't ask for your transcripts in the first initial stage. So that's something says a lot about your grades in your application process. But bear in mind that we're strictly talking about tech companies. I know that if we're going for trading companies or consulting firms, the scenario is a bit different.
And
Yeah,
probably
actually,
banks as well.
Yeah, that's a good point about trading companies too, because I got an offer from Optiva, and they were the only company that dared ask me about my grades during the recruitment process. I remember they specifically pointed out my lowest performing subject, and they were like, "Why are your grades so low on the subject?" With no holding back. but as long as you handle the answer well, like if I remember correctly, that subject, I got a 57 for it. And my answer was I really didn't care about the subject because I was switching major into something I care more about. And I put in all my effort into things that I care about and I prioritize. So if you just handle any questions that do come to you regarding your grades, and they will be very rare in the first place, you should be fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, it's always good to hear that your grades don't matter that much. So yeah, moving on. One of the panelist members here, Algorithms Aisha, as she likes to call herself, has been competitive programming since she was 14. So how important is competitive programming experience in your application?
Wow, really put me on the spot there. I call myself that, huh? So with regards to competitive programming, one of the reasons I got into competitive programming in high school was because it was sort of the only activity that we could do as programmers, or like any sort of programming activity. So that's sort of why I got into it. But coming into uni, I didn't really continue with that because I found other things that I really liked doing. And there was often this perception of people who intern at big tech companies being really good at competitive programming, you know, being superstars at C++, and just generally having a bunch of awards within that realm. And it does help, but I think that people can often overstate how important it is. In fact, there were 69 interns in the Google internship that I did last summer, and only 2 people were actually did competitive programming seriously, one of which was me. So how important is competitive programming? If it's something that you like doing, definitely go into it. It helps you a lot with your interview practice. I don't feel like I had to stress out as much about interview practices as other people in my year because I feel like I had sort of that practice during high school. So it does help with that, but competitive programming is sort of, if you want to just prepare for interviews, it's way too much. If you just read the book, Cracking the Coding Interview, if you do a bunch of leak code questions, you're probably better off. And out of curiosity, I did speak to a lot of the other Google interns on how they prepared for their technical interviews. And most of them just spent 3 to 4 weeks doing like 20 leak code questions a week to prepare for their interviews. So how important is competitive programming? Like barely, I would say, to be honest. And in fact, I actually didn't apply to the Google internship. My recruiter reached out to me, and how she found me was actually that I was volunteering for a Women in Tech event in Sydney that Google was sponsoring. And basically she found my name in the volunteers list, and my resume was attached to the volunteers list. So she reached out to me through that. So basically, as long as you do something in community work, or even if it's competitive programming that you like doing, it should be fine. But competitive programming is not as important as you might think. Yeah.
Great, thank you. That's a really thorough answer. Does the other 2 panelist members have anything to add to it, or?
I would add very shortly that some people emphasize competitive programming is because not what it is, well, more rather because what it teaches you, which is algorithms and data structures. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's what interviews in major tech companies do assess. So do you have to do competitive programming to learn that? Absolutely not. Rather, when you put forward your resume, well, competitive programming, unless you have a lot of awards, that's not going to be a heavy part in your resume, and you're not going to get picked up. Rather, if you have a lot of good projects, open source activities, volunteering experiences, that's going to stand out more rather than just doing competitive programming.
Yeah, great, thank you. Coming to good projects, as Zach mentioned before, the timetable optimization tool Look Ahead was a personal project completed very successfully by Rahul. And I'm sure that we would all like to know if this personal project on his resume actually helped him in his venture to find internships.
Yeah, definitely. So if anyone wasn't aware, I put a link in chat to the web app because I saw a problem where you have 4 university subjects you're taking, and there are so many different combinations of classes that you can create. So you might have a tutorial on Monday, Maybe you have like, I know for Calc 2, there were like at least 40 classes throughout the week, and putting all of them together to find the most optimal timetable, it was very difficult. And I was like, okay, that's something that can be solved with programming. So why don't I just go ahead and do it? I couldn't find any good existing tools to do so. And credit where credit's due, Gigi is the co-creator. She did the entire UI, which is why it looks so beautiful. And she is also in the Zoom call right now. And I would have to say that that personal project helped me a lot to make my resume stand out. I didn't know any web development before I did it. I was learning web development as I was creating the tool. Of course, when you create something for the first time using a new technology, it's probably going to be hot trash. And as such, I had to rewrite it from scratch with the help of Gigi doing the entire UI. And essentially, having projects that you've done shows to your recruiter that you really care about technology in the first place. You literally have created something that you're not getting paid for and solving a problem using tech. And especially in my case, tech that they don't even teach at university. I went ahead and I learned web development. That already shows initiative to the recruiters. And it also shows that you want to help out people using technology. Another thing with personal projects is that it's supposed to be fun. So never look at personal projects as a task that should be laborious. If you are ever thinking about doing a personal project, it should be fun. I don't know anybody who has done a personal project and has said, oh, I don't want to do this. I just don't want to do a personal project. If you're doing a personal project, by the virtue of it, nature of it, it's supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to literally show to the recruiter that what I said before, you're taking the initiative on solving a problem using technology. And it does set you apart a lot because people typically on the resume, they'll only list their university projects, which they've had to do as part of their coursework. And if you think with the, let's say 100, 200, 300 graduates that are graduating at the same time as you, they've all done that project. They've all done some variation of that project. It doesn't really help set you apart. And in my case, it can definitely compensate for subpar grades, you know? So yeah, using personal projects as compensation for another weakness is also very powerful. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can add. All I can say is personal projects, working on open source projects as well. You don't have to create a personal project from scratch, are very invaluable and really will set you apart from your typical computer science graduate.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for that answer. Do you guys have anything to add, Aisha and Kaif?
Aisha, do you have anything?
I was just sharing a link to Hacktoberfest for open source if anybody's interested in it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and another cool resource is if you want to start working on an open source project, there's this thing called Google Summer of Code that happens from May, June, July, and basically you get paid to work on an open source project. And it's next May from 2021 and it's remote. So if you're interested in starting something like that, then yeah, that's good.
What I'll add from my part, apart from Ruhil and Aisha, was there wasn't a single interview where I wasn't asked about my personal projects and had a long conversation with the recruiter. Of all, I don't know, the 10, 15 interviews I did, like I'm talking about the in-person ones, almost all of them specifically picked up a personal project and talked to me about it. That just shows how much they care. And as students, we are not really expected to have a bulk on the experience side. That's what we compensate with our projects.
Yeah, and I definitely like a good point that I completely forgot to mention on that throughout my interviews as well, especially with like Atlassian, for example, where I got an offer from them. I had an entire 45-minute interview where I had to pick a personal project or a coursework project that I've worked on and explain the entire tech stack from front end to back end. And what better thing to choose than something I created entirely from scratch. So I completely aced that interview precisely because I did it first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for the links, Aisha. That's really good. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a student who does have an internship on his resume, but it is unpaid or from a very small company. Would you say this reduces the value of the internship, or reduces the value of the experience? This is an open question, so if anyone has any answer.
Yeah, I can jump on this first. What I would say is, look, I understand unpaid internships. A lot of you might not have the liberty to do it, financially speaking, and that's completely okay. But for the ones who can, I would highly encourage you to get those, because not all of you will have those internships from the second year, first of all. And the next thing is, before you move to your second or your second last or last year, you're not actually going to get many offers anyways. That's where these unpaid internships really come in and give you a lot of benefit. There are tons of great programs out there for Melbourne, around Melbourne. I would say Melbourne, the Melbourne Space Program, Melbourne Uni Racing, ARIS are some really highly technical ones, as well as like, these are not internships, but if you become like student ambassadors for Microsoft, the DSC, opportunities like the DSC, or I know Oracle, in even MathWorks, which make math labs, have like student ambassador programs. So get involved with those programs. They might not give you any monetary value, but the amount of experience, the amount of knowledge it's going to give you is massive. And the best thing about it is that's going to be the shiny part in your resume when you apply for internships. That's the leverage you're going to take on. I can personally say hands-on that I have learned way more from Melbourne Space Program than I did in my university. And that just speaks something else.
Yeah, I think I've covered it pretty well in terms of unpaid internships. Also, I think it's important to look at what the organization is trying to achieve. So I think Melbourne Space Program is pretty well respected, and the reason that they don't pay their interns is just because they're not there to make a profit. So it's important to keep in mind like what the goals of the organizations are. But if an organization just seems like they're trying to poach off of you, or they're making you do more work than you should be doing, or they just don't want to pay you for the sake of not paying you, probably not worth doing it. So there's not really like a straight up answer, but I've done an unpaid internship with a startup when they were just starting out, and they've grown pretty big now. So now they can pay their interns. So like I know that they weren't trying to poach me, for example. But yeah, I guess it's important to just be careful and to not be targeted if you end up working for one. Yeah,
that's very important. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So coming to the final question, how much does a degree from a good university matter? Or, to rephrase it, if you go to a bad university, would that hinder your chances of landing a good internship?
I guess I can start with this. So I think I'm not going to avoid the hard fact that if you go to a good university, getting into a big company is a lot easier. So let's take the US as an example. They have this concept called target schools, where companies literally go and try to create an easy funnel for people from Ivy League universities or Stanford or MIT. And I don't know if it's like the exact similar concept in Australia, but there's no particular speak of like target schools in Australia. But it's a lot easier that I've noticed anecdotally for people to get interviews from Group of 8 universities in Australia than it is for people in small universities. Now, the reason why may be just because people at University of Melbourne and Monash happen to just be more motivated people. But I will also say that it's not as hard as it is to stand out to big tech companies in Australia as it is in the US. So that is an advantage that you have as an Australian student that you can use to your benefit. I guess the most important thing to keep in mind is that it's not impossible and the standards aren't impossibly high. And just by being in Australia, it is a lot easier to get into a big tech company. It doesn't have to be Google or Microsoft or Facebook, but it's not as difficult as it is in the United States.
To add on to that, I like to think always from the perspective of a recruiter. If they've looked at your resume and they've said, okay, I want to get this person past resume screening, then they've most likely looked at your university and said, okay, that's fine. I'm happy with their where they got their education from, right? And so I think it will only matter if it even does up to the the first interview, where you get past resume screening, and from then it's fair game. You just have to impress the recruiter based on your other things.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have any much more to add on that, onto what Aisha and Will said.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So that ends the first session. I hope that was really helpful to all the participants. So now we'd move on to questions from you guys, which is from Paul Levy. So yeah, Zach, would you like to ask the questions?
Yep, sure. So the top voted question we have: what kind of extracurricular activities would you say are worthwhile, and are there any that aren't worth our time? So anyone would like to take over?
Sure, I can jump in first. I've been quite involved with university clubs even before I got into Melbourne Uni. So basically, university clubs is the best extracurricular activities I would recommend. And I would actually recommend technical ones, or those which are more aligned with your, let's say, goals. Like I personally was very interested in cybersecurity. That's why I got with MISC. If you're interested in IoT or data science, whatever it is, find a club like that. Be involved with them. Try to be on the committee. Try to be on the executive panel. That pays a lot in the long run, because a lot of the information I knew about internships, about this, is directly from those clubs, because those clubs not only had, let's say, students, high school students or first year students like myself. There was a lot of third year students who are going for internships, who are looking for jobs and whatnot. Interacting with them, I got to know a lot about the ins and outs of job application, how the professional world works a bit. Quite a lot. So I'm from the beginning, I had quite a practical understanding. Okay, so your grades are important, but they're not so important. So probably not gonna focus entire time on that. These are the things they did. These are the things they found useful. So I could get that very useful advice from early on in my university life, and I think that was a really big game changer for myself, knowing all that information. Anything that isn't worthwhile, I wouldn't. Nothing's not worthwhile in my opinion. If you're interested in and you're passionate about it, please do it.
I might just add on really quickly that it doesn't necessarily have to be just clubs from a university. So I personally I wasn't really involved as much with clubs on campus. I feel like I was more involved with like Australia-wide technology initiatives like Google Developers Group, or conferences, or speaking at conferences, stuff like that. So those are also things that you can keep in mind. As Kaif said beautifully, like it's a really, really good starting point. And if you end up being on the committee team, it's also great to be part of something that spreads technology to people on campus. But there is also a lot bigger world of initiatives in Australia in general that you should definitely look out for as well, in conjunction with this.
One thing that wasn't mentioned, but I think is really valuable, if you can, especially in like Melbourne University, for example, undergraduate students can be tutors. And even last semester, while I was in my final semester of my bachelor's, I was a head tutor for a second year subject. And tutoring is really, it pays, and it also lets you solidify the knowledge in the subject that you are doing. There's no better way to fully say you understand a topic than when you can actually teach it. So that's an avenue that you can definitely explore.
Great answers from all three panelists. And I guess second question would be, as a first year where internships aren't readily available, would it be better to contribute to open source projects or create your own projects?
Both.
Okay,
I don't see
so,
why not.
Sorry, basically, a lot of people say, all right, I'm going to contribute to open source projects. But it's not that simple. You have to have the skills to make meaningful contributions, apart from, you know, fixing a typo. And so if you are a first year, your skills may be very underdeveloped. And there is no better way to develop them than creating your own projects and getting familiar with a specific tech stack. And from then on, it would make sense for you to be able to contribute to open source projects within that tech stack, right? So before I did Look Ahead, I would not be comfortable contributing to any web development GitHub repositories, right? But now that I've spent like, you know, a year, 2 years semi-regularly developing in React and some other JavaScript frameworks, I would feel more confident making meaningful contributions to open source repositories. So definitely consider that before you decide to just contribute to open source software.
Yeah, no, don't contribute to open source just for the sake of it or just because of the name, but actual contributions will, because people will ask about you, what did you contribute? If you put it on resume in your interviews, you better be able to talk about it.
Cool, great answers. Did anyone else want to add on, or is that cool? Great answers from all panelists. Again, I hope that was really informative for people who asked. And now we're going to be moving back to Pat asking the rest of the 5 questions, and then we'll be going back to the poll EV. So don't forget to put your questions in.
Awesome. So that was very, very insightful and extremely helpful, even for myself. I definitely have a new perspective on grades, internships, personal projects, and what really to do when it comes to planning myself out and getting that experience that I really need. Now, as Sanjog mentioned, the first part of it was everything that was to do with your resume. The next couple of questions will be to do everything that is beyond your resume, like personal development, like building your network, all factors considered that happens outside your resume. So first off, a big question. So we know there are quite a lot of international students in our audience today, and we know it's really hard for international students to get a job. Fortunately, one of our panelists, Kev, is an international student himself, and the other 2 panelists, Rohil and Aisha, have worked a lot with students in the past. So how hard is it to get a job for international students, and how do you really tackle this problem?
Do you guys want to start first, or do you want me to go ahead?
I think you should start as an international student.
Sure. To be bluntly honest with you, I've spent majority of my first year kind of getting disappointed and discouraged to see that there is, when I look for jobs, and almost 70 to 80% of them was restricted to me. I know that is tough, and believe me, I'm in the same shoes as you guys are. But the way I started working around it is basically trying to be more involved with student clubs and organizations, student organizations like Melbourne Space. That was a massive game changer for me. And I actively, even at some applications, even if they accept international student, I still applied because I needed the interview practice regardless. But yeah, it was a tough time, but looking back now, there's actually more companies than I realize that actually take international students, not just like 5 or 10 companies. And I've been tracking them, and I know Zakaria has the link, but I actually created like an Excel sheet with a list of companies which take in international students for internships and grad roles. And I think there's close to 50 companies in that list. They're majorly tech companies, and the requirements I'm talking about are for Australia and New Zealand. So this list I've been making just like since the beginning of this year. So please give it a go. The reason I created this is because I don't want people to feel the same way that I felt, that hey, there's no hope for me, that there is no companies I can apply for. There are suddenly lots of opportunities for you out there. Most major tech companies, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Canva, do take in international students, Optiver included. So most major tech companies do. There's a lot of other, let's say, other renowned companies, but less mainstream, also taking international students. Apart from the list of companies, there's also like job platforms I used. So I really want to plug in Grad Australia. The reason being in Grad Australia, when you search for internships, you can basically filter by jobs which take in international students or not. And that was a like big time saver for myself, that hey, I don't need to constantly check whether and look that whether this company takes in or not. And there's a few other platforms there. Lastly, like there's some other resources which not relevant to this question. The last thing I want to mention, and I am a bit cautious in saying that certain companies, if you are if you demonstrate that if you demonstrate that they should make an exception for you, they would make an exception for you. Atlassian doesn't take in international students, but here we are. I'm doing internships with Atlassian. Part of the reason was like the recruiter reached out to me, and my interviews went fairly well. So they decided to make an exception for my case. So if you do perform, there are going to be exceptions. The list that was just posted, I'll be actively maintaining it. If you think any companies I've missed, please feel free to let me know. I'll definitely add it. Or if you think some company has been mistakenly added, which I don't think it should be, but if it does, so let me know. I'll remove that as well. But yeah, I'll be maintaining this list through. I'll definitely recommend it to bookmark this and share with your friends to let them know that, hey, there's a lot of opportunities out there and we can definitely leverage them.
Yeah, I just wanted to really quickly add that interacting with some of my international friends applying to stuff like hackathons and internships. So I've noticed that sometimes internships can have this requirement saying you're required to have full working rights. And usually some people can interpret that as, oh, I need to be a citizen or a New Zealand citizen or an Australian citizen. But I think sometimes what they mean is that you need to have full working rights during the period that the internship is running. And international students do have full working rights during holiday breaks. So if you ever notice something like that, I'd just apply anyway, and just make it clear that as an international student, I do have full working rights during the summer and winter breaks. So yeah, I think that's important to keep in mind.
That's a very good point. Thanks for that, Ash.
One thing I'll add is because of the restricted pool of jobs you have access to, it's more important than ever that you are prepared for interviews should you get some with these companies. Preparation is always important, but I know I had the luxury of practice for other companies, but from what I've seen, international students have to take all their shots with 100% preparation. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that. On to our next one. I'm very sure that our panel did not take the typical route to go with. So networking really is a big thing, right? And networking is very important in terms of getting a job, getting your name out there, and even your resume for that fact. And our panelists definitely did not take the typical route to networking. And so I'd like to ask each and every one of you, what does networking really mean to you? And how did it really help you get a job?
So I guess I'll start off with this one. In terms of networking, that's a hard question because I feel like there's not like one particular definition of networking. So I think that I really enjoy going to a bunch of technology events and just generally meeting people and talking to people. Even if meeting someone doesn't necessarily lead to something, I think that keeping people close to you is a really good way of knowing what's going on within the community. So as an example, there was a scholarship this year that I didn't really know about, and not many people from my uni really knew about, but somebody who I knew from an event that I went to in Brisbane got it last year, and I was like, oh, okay, the applications are open, maybe I can apply this year too. And then I applied and I got it. And I guess like just going to events and just showing up and meeting people is a really good way of being aware of what's going on in the community. But in terms of specifics, maybe Kaif and Rohil can give more insight into that.
I think you've networked more than I have, Kaif, so go ahead.
Sure. I think, again, I'll share a very, I'd say personal insights or sort of experience. In the beginning, I did not actually like networking that much. I kind of felt I was, first of all, a bit nervous, and I didn't just feel complete after, let's say, those events. And I did a bit of, let's say, soul searching, and I realized that I was deciphering networking as the wrong way. I was looking at networking as this one-way street that, hey, I'm going to go to this event, talk to this 3 or 4 people, and boom, I'll have an internship, or I'll have an offer on my plate. It certainly does not work that way. It is a two-way street. Think of the other person as yourself. Like, that person has come to that event as well to get some values out of that event as well. They have, let's say, their personal motivations and whatnot. So if you come with the motivation that, hey, I'm gonna go to this a couple of events, talk to these people, and they're just gonna be offering me jobs, that doesn't work that way, not at all. And that's why I've seen a lot of people feel disappointed after networking events as well. So so my strategy was, I started thinking, how can I give the other person value? So I thought about it a lot, and the conclusion I came up with is, I came with this strategy that I would always talk to, let's say, the panel members, or the event speakers who are pretty much like the most renowned person. And I would go to them and talk to them and say that, hey, I really enjoyed your talk, etc. Would you ever like to come to the University of Melbourne and give a similar talk with the Information Security Club? So when I say that, at that point, the other person is also seeing some value that I can provide him. So that becomes a two-way connection, rather than I'm just trying to connect with him. And after doing that, I started getting like a lot more positive responses. People willingly gave me their LinkedIn. They messaged me about the events, that, hey, when's this event's gonna happen and whatnot. Initially, I kept doing it regarding cybersecurity. Then afterwards, I started doing it for all the clubs. Let's say I went to an IoT event, and then I would go to the panel speaker or member and say that, I really liked your talk. Do you want to come to University of Melbourne and give a talk? And then I would go back to the UniMelb IoT club, whom I don't know, and I'm just speaking this hypothetically. I don't want to bring in any real experiences here, or anyone who's in the call. And in the IoT club, and go to them and say that, hey, I know a person from Microsoft who specializes in IoT. Would you like me to bring him and they can give a talk? That way, that IoT people know me, that person knows me. It's a win-win situation. And that's how pretty much I have lots of friends in almost all the major tech clubs in at least University of Melbourne, because I started doing that. And that had a much higher response rate from the networkings. And after that, if it's not the main people, I started making the networking events more about themselves rather than myself. I would go to the networking events, talk and ask about, hey, what projects are you doing? Are you doing anything cool? What brought you to this networking event? Once you start making it about themselves, about the other person, that's where you start seeing that connection actually happen. And the value I've really got, again, I'm not saying that you do only networking for the sake of value, but the place where it really helped me is not immediately, but let's say 5 months or 4 months down the track, when I was applying for a role in that company and I had some interaction with that person, and even in LinkedIn, then I can go and say that, hey, can you please give me a referral, or ask for his tips, or how does the company's work culture is like. And they were much more open to give me feedback or help me out, because A, I gave them value, and B, I just did not talk to them for the sake of getting value, rather than establishing that two-way relationship. So TLDR, networking is a two-way street. as long as you remember that, you're gonna have like an pleasant experience. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, and to add on to that, one thing that I don't think has been mentioned are referrals. And referrals are where, if you're not aware, it's where someone at a company tells their recruiting department or their manager about somebody else who might be a good fit for the company. And referrals are very powerful. They are typically not utilized as much as they should. And that usually comes from the fact that you as a student may not know many people at a certain company. However, I'd like to make you rethink the whole referral process with a bit more information that you may not know. Usually the people at the bigger tech companies who put in a referral for you, they will be given compensation if you get hired. So for example, I got an email from Optiva a few weeks ago. If I were to refer an intern, I would get $2,000 in pay when they start with us. If I were to refer a graduate, I would get $4,000 when they start and $4,000 after they finish probation. And if you look at it that way, now it turns away from, oh, they wouldn't want to refer me, right? I wouldn't be able to bring them any value. But a lot of these companies, you do get compensation for referring a good candidate. So definitely reach out to friends. Ask your friends if they have any friends working at these companies. And then go and approach these people and say, hey, look, I have put in, am I lagging or can you hear me? You know what I mean? Okay. I have put in the work, I've prepared, I've done a lot of leak code questions. Would you be able to refer me to this company? And by reaching out to friends of friends and friends, I was able to get referrals to, say, Google, Atlassian, Microsoft, Facebook, big companies. But it's not the be all and end all. That only gets you as far as the interview screening stage. It'll just get you past the interview screening stage, right? You still have to have prepared and have the skills necessary to pass through that interview pipeline and get an offer at the end. And with all I just said, I still didn't get any referrals for Optiva, but I ended up accepting an offer from Optiva. So they're definitely not like you have to have a referral, but it does help you get over that interview screening process, which is the hardest part of getting through that pipeline, in my opinion.
Yeah. So referrals kind of almost, and for most companies, guarantee you that you get an interview. So from that resume phase to that, let's say, phone screening or that phase in most companies. So, and that's basically a lot of cutoff, because let's say if 90,000 people apply, only let's say a few hundred or let's say a few thousand, since I said 90,000, just to keep the ratio same, only a few thousand gets called in for that role. So realistically, companies like Google, Atlassian, or Optiva, where thousands of people apply, they only interview, or let's say, a few hundred at best. So you see the ratio drops a lot. So if you have a referral, that sort of guarantees you that you make it that initial cut. And after that, it's basically your hard work, your dedication, and a bit of luck to get you through the line.
Well, that is incredible insight, and I really love the strategy that Kev played when it comes to giving somebody else value and really emphasizing on that rather than thinking about yourself all the time. Awesome. So with that, we will move on to the next question. Just before that, so a little background on our panelists. So Aisha used to contribute a lot to the GDGs. Kev was the secretary of MISC, or Melbourne University Cybersecurity. Rohil was the secretary of the IoT Club. And so my question would be leading to, how does getting involved with clubs or the Australian tech community help you in getting a job?
I think it's important to target this question from a different angle, that it's not always about getting a job. I don't think my aim in helping with the Australian tech community was, I hope this ends up in an internship. And I don't know, maybe it might be helpful if that's your goal, but I don't know, that wasn't really my goal. And I think when you focus on targeting people and trying to start a conversation about tech, and when you start doing talks or when you start hosting talks, and like Kaif mentioned, when you start giving importance to people, I think that you create your own place in the community, which is really important to have. So how does that help you in getting a job? So firstly, you do create impact within this certain community and people start knowing what you stand for, which is important. And I don't feel like I ever really went out of my way to volunteer for things for the sake of getting a job, but it happened anyway. So as an example, there was this event that I was emceeing for called, I actually forgot what it was called, but it was a GGG event that happened last October-ish. Yeah. And basically there was this company that saw my LinkedIn, and then they were also there at the event. And then they're like, oh wait, you're that person who we saw on LinkedIn and now you're emceeing for this event. This is really cool. Like we can fast track you to the interview process. So it's like, I never really went out of my way to find particular opportunities. I feel like when you start involving yourself and putting yourself out there, people sort of levitate to you. And I get that this can be hard if you're not particularly involved yet, but I do believe that this eventually happens. And I think that it's important to target this from the angle. It's not always about getting a job. And I think that you need to evaluate also what's important to you. And to me, that was to basically create my place within the community and make sure people knew what I stood for in terms of tech. So I hope that helped. Kaif, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I started with MISC, not because, again, because it's going to get a job, but it's more like I was interested in cybersecurity. I wanted to just explore. Most of the things I do now even is not because having that in the back of my mind, oh, this might get me a job. It's more because I'm genuinely interested in that. And like the majority of the reason behind I do a lot of events is because like I got a lot of support when I was growing up. So I would like to reciprocate the same for other people. However, that being said, I do understand the sentiment of the jobs here. And again, I'm not promoting that you do this because to get a job, but if you do this, the way it can help you to get a job is when recruiters or people see that you're involved with a club or an extracurricular activity or what it is, it sort of portrays that you're passionate about it. Like because I'm with MISC, people generally assume I'm very passionate about cybersecurity, which in this case I am, and that's the edge. These clubs and stuff can really give you like a boost. For example, I'm interning in a cybersecurity role at Atlassian, but my major is strictly computer science, and I did not do any cybersecurity courses at all in university. So yeah, but did I think, oh, I'm gonna do cybersecurity with a MISC and get a cybersecurity job? No, but did it give me an edge afterwards, an unintentional edge? Yes. So looking back, yeah, it was just an unintentional thing that happened, and I'm glad that it happened. Rohil, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, everything you two said, it was like spot on. And essentially, thinking from the perspective of a recruiter again, they are looking for well-rounded individuals that are passionate about different things, and participating in a club voluntarily, passionate about something. And definitely do not join a club just for the sake of getting a job. It'll be worse for the club. It won't benefit you that much. So definitely join a club that you're interested in contributing to.
Awesome. I think that was really helpful insight. And I must say, I should have rephrased my question rather than it focusing on a job, because I too am participating in the DSA, and it's not like I am participating for the job itself, but for the fun of it. Fantastic. So with that, my last question would be, and this is in relation to the resumes that people sent earlier. How can I tell if my resume is worth applying for, and what are the key points I should consider in my resume?
I can go with this one because I had the privilege of being both ends of the resume game, and at Melbourne Space and at Microsoft. What I noticed is a lot of people think their resumes are not good enough, or needs improvement. And okay, there's two sides of things. In most cases, student resumes do need some improvements, but I strongly believe that don't stop yourself from applying a job just because you think your resume or your profile is not good enough. Speaking to a lot of recruiters, what I have realized is in the job description, you only need to match 60 to 70% of the job description to be considered for the next few rounds. They're not looking for a 100% job description match, although that is the ideal candidate, but in reality, that just doesn't happen. So if you look at your resume and look at the job description and say there's a big mismatch, you can tune your resume towards that job and apply. It doesn't necessarily have to match everything. And one important resources I found very useful is on YouTube. There's a lot of resume tips by Google, by Microsoft. I'm not sure about Accenture, but these major companies have a lot of resume guides, as well as some other YouTubers, like the Tech Lead. I do not endorse him, but but his resume video was actually quite good. So the Tech Leads, so I saw all these videos and then prepared my resume. So don't go like without any basis or background. Watch this video. It's like doing your project. If you jump straight on the project without learning the theory, you're not gonna be able to do much. So watch those videos, get a good understanding, and then start preparing your resume. And the last thing I would add is always tailor your resume towards the job. Don't apply with one resume in 10 different companies. I made that mistake, had a very small success rate. Do 1 or 2 applications in applications around for 2 or 3 months. Do 1 or 2 applications, really tailor your resume towards the job. You don't need to match everything, but yeah, that's all I have to say. How about the others?
I think we were gonna go over some resumes just to point out what was like good and bad that we got from the audience. Are we doing that now?
Yeah, I think we can go over a quick resume and just point out the yays and nays.
Cool.
Do you want to screen share, Brad?
My screen sharing is trash. I don't know what happens. Every time I do it, I like get kicked out of the Zoom call. So I think somebody else should do it.
I have them. Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, that would be good.
Cool. I hope it works.
So spicy stuff. We're gonna go over somebody's resume and roast it. No, I'm kidding. Cool. Hype, do you want to start with your thoughts?
Yeah. To me, it actually looks quite a good resume because it has the appropriate work experience, the personal projects, the education, as well as the skills references section. So in terms of content required, nothing important is actually missing. All the appropriate links is up there. There's no weird fonts or weird formatting, anything going on. So that's good. The only glaring thing I can notice is there's no numbers here. Like you're going to be really based on your impact. So if you can add lines like, let's say your personal projects, you highlight how you changed something or how you made improvements to a certain thing and really put it in a numbers perspective. For example, if I said, I worked on this algorithm that increased my the previous algorithm's performance by 40 or 50%. And I do understand a lot of times you don't have those, but still it's very important to mention the outcome. Like what I can see here is you're basically saying the responsibilities that, hey, you have developed this, wrote that, used this, but what was the exact outcome? That's what I would like to know.
Yeah, Kaif, that's a really good point you made. And also just really quickly to add, I know it's already pretty obvious, but it's not just like system quantifications necessarily, but just like Kaif said, like just general outcomes. So if you created an initiative, it's really important to point out how many people signed up to this initiative, how engaged people were, for example. So just generally including an outcome is really important than just adding out bullet points. And Yeah, this resume is really well laid out. It's very simple. It's in one page that I really like. It's in black and white. That is great. It's all in one direction. So it's really easy to read through. It's bullet pointed, which is great. If you can scroll up a little bit to the top, I'm not really too sure about the About Me section though. It's really difficult to pinpoint like who you are and what's important to you impactfully within like 2 to 3 sentences that you can't do in an interview. So I'm not too convinced by that section. So possibly think about that. And yeah, what about you, Rahul? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, on that About Me thing. So it's pretty common knowledge that recruiters. Am I lagging or am I okay?
Yeah, you
okay.
actually lagged a bit.
So basically, okay, so I'm good now. Awesome. So basically, the About Me is recruiters don't spend that much time looking at your resume. I can probably guarantee you that if they were looking at this resume and it was in the middle of a pile, they're not going to read the About Me. They're probably just going to skim it, look at it as some sort of stock standard About Me that literally every single applicant would say, I love technology. I want to have a job in technology. It's like, great, cool. They're not going to read it. They're just going to look at what you've done. And I definitely use that space to put in some more quantifiable stuff, or make the font size a bit bigger if it's a bit too small. Space is of utmost importance, and so you've got to try and maximize the amount of space used for useful things. And definitely, I want to see numbers on that resume, because I think in every single, in my own resume, every single experience I had, I put numbers, right? There's a difference between me saying I created a timetable optimization tool that helps students, and I created a timetable optimization tool used by 50,000 students within a year of release, right? So definitely put in that quantifiable stuff.
Yeah, and just to quickly add on to that, I think that applies to achievements as well. A piece of good feedback I got from somebody critiquing my resume was, if you got a scholarship, like over here, Monash International Merit Scholarship, maybe include how many people were selected and how many people applied for it. I think that can also help in terms of quantification.
Yeah. But overall, this is actually quite a good resume, I would say. Quite
yeah,
standard.
I think it's a pretty good resume.
Yeah, same.
Do you want to move to the next one?
Just one more thing really quickly. So one kind of hack that I discovered from Google Docs, I'm maybe people already did this, but can you scroll up to the top, please, with the links? So what I do is like, I don't put in the links. I just go LinkedIn and then I add a link to it. So basically, like if you click on LinkedIn, it just takes you to it rather than like you having to copy paste the link and then go to your browser. And then sometimes when on my personal projects, I add the link to it. So if, for example, order tracking package, if you clicked on it, it'll take you to my GitHub page. Or if I link to my public speaking, I'll go like, oh, I spoke at Google Cloud about this. It'll take you to that. So maybe that's something you can also put in to make it.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of projects, I actually remembered something very important, that the personal projects and the work experience side is good, but you know how you have these isolated skills and languages you have listed out here? I would rather have them integrated in your work experience and your personal projects, like in brackets, or you can say wrote how you say a Python script, maybe highlight Python and whatnot, or even like in brackets, you can say that these are all the skills I've used. I've seen even some people have like a separate bullet point saying something like tech stack, and just write or list all the tech stack they have used. So that gives companies, and highlight that as well. So that gives a very good overview of what exactly did you, tools and technologies did you learn and use throughout that project.
Wow, I wonder who you got that tech stack idea from.
It was from the one and only Asha. I stole it from her. Alrighty, moving to the next one, or do you guys want to have?
No, I think I said.
Good. Okay. Can you guys see this next one?
Yep. How about you start this time?
Yeah,
Rahul?
how about you start first, Kai?
Okay. Um, Looking at overall, I would say the same thing again, that in terms of content required, I don't see anything is actually missing. All the important communication links, they're all linked and everything. The education is there, the projects, the skills awards, everything is there. However, again, no disrespect or anything to the candidate, I personally feel that to perform well, this resume would require a lot of work. Like, for example, my first impression was, well, what is this blank page doing here? And recruiters work in a high stress scenario. Like, some of them might get triggered by seeing this, or might even get triggered by seeing a 3-page resume. So my first suggestion would be, keep for student roles, keep it to max, like max with a capital letter. I cannot emphasize this enough. Don't go over 2 pages. Ideally 1 page, but not over 2 page at all. I can see a lot of white spaces, which white spaces is good, but at this case, I can see those white spaces can be filled up. Like this skills and awards section, I can see this person is actually really engaged. They've did a lot of projects, a lot of training, a lot of volunteering. But again, it comes to that thing I mentioned. Are you tailoring your resume for the role? How much is like certain volunteering roles, like the Robin Hood Academy is going to help you with, let's say, something tech related. So is this excess or not? So if it's excess, cut it out. If it's not, like don't like put it out there, and do it in such a way that only your highest achievements is out there. Like I can say without any doubt that from all the scholarship that this person is highly capable. But I actually have to read through all this and look a lot to realize that, hey, okay, what's going on where? That was my initial impressions. What do you guys think?
I think definitely it requires a lot of work to be appealing to a recruiter. The 2-page limit is definitely should be adhered to, and I would even go as far to say 1 page is more than enough for a student. Like, if you're doing more than 1 page, you're putting too much information, too much unnecessary information into it. That will really make your really good achievements not stand out that well. When you look, like within the first 2 seconds of looking at the resume, I should be able to tell like what your 3 or 4 proudest achievements are, and they should be near the top of your resume. There's a lot of white space in this resume that could go. If you compare this to the previous one, all that information was there at the top. I didn't have to move my eyes. I didn't have to scroll too far to find out what I need to about this candidate. And they do seem to be very accomplished, but you have to manually read every single part to find out what the most impactful projects of theirs were. So definitely, and the same thing with quantifiable outcomes. I don't see that many numbers. I just see a lot of text, a lot of text. Things should be bolded if they are especially relevant. So there's no actual bolded text within the paragraphs to showcase, what is the most important part of your projects or your experience. And definitely you can cut a lot of things out of there that may not be relevant for particular jobs.
Yeah, Rahul, you made a really good point with the relevant stuff. That there are so many people who did, like, I don't know, 6, 7 internships, but they still managed to get their resumes down in 1 page because of picking out what's relevant to what they're applying to. So Kaif said, when you're applying to jobs, make sure not to have like one standard template when you're applying to jobs. Make sure that you categorize and put in what's relevant to that job so that they see what's important. So in terms of this, I feel like this person is super accomplished again, and it's very clear that they're very engaged with the community and they have a bunch of awards. But I noticed that they have stuff from like 2015, which was 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, August 2015. I don't think you should feel the pressure of feeling to put in everything that you've ever done. because it takes up way too much space, and your intention is to make this as easy of an experience as you can for the recruiter. So in terms of that, what the first resume did really well was it had really good layout. There were no font styling. It was black and white. The only styling they had was like bold and underlined and italics, which is like all you need. You don't need any colored fonts. There's way too much white space here. Try not to use a Google Docs default resume template. And another thing is, it can be a bit hard to read this because of the styling, but also because there's so many sections to this resume. Like, firstly, like you can read downwards, but you can also read sideways. And it's like, I get confused, like where I want to look. So try to get rid of the columns. Like, you know how you have the activities and extracurriculars sections, like move that to its own section underneath education. If you can make the font smaller, if you get rid of the styling, you definitely can bring this under one page. And try, as a rule of thumb, try to only include stuff from like the last 2 years. Like, I don't know how important it is to know what stuff you did like half a decade ago. And yeah, I think that's all for me. Oh, and maybe one more thing is, I don't know how useful it is to put in online certifications. I personally don't feel like they've ever helped me that much.
Yeah, unless it's super relevant to the job, I wouldn't put it there.
Yeah, I actually don't know what an MTA is, so maybe it might be like a super big thing, but you know, if it's like a Coursera course, I generally avoid putting it up there. But if it's a AWS certification, I think that's an industry standard some places. So maybe that. Yeah. Oh, and another thing, if you could go to the top of the resume. Yeah, so all of the stuff like with objective, you really don't need the objective stuff. And then in terms of the links, like with your email and LinkedIn, you can put that all into one line. Like, it doesn't need to be on separate lines. And problem solver with a passion for AI and ML, like how many students can say that? Like, everybody here can probably say that same thing. So just try to get rid of tropes and just make it as concise and as black and white, as plain as possible, basically.
I have a very colorful resume and I feel attacked. Just kidding. Yeah, that is, in most cases, black and white is, it's okay to have some color highlights in some places, but please make sure that you're not overdoing it. A lot of people do overdo it, and that is, yeah, that costs them. And I get the motivation of putting everything. You are an involved person and you want to show the recruiter that, hey, I have all this experience and I've been engaged from so long. And honestly, this is not the right way to communicate that, because your recruiter is gonna spend like 6 to 8 seconds to get a first impression, and they'll more be irritated by the size rather than be impressed by all your engagements.
Yeah, and two final things. Attention to detail. I can already see a number of grammatical, spelling errors, spacing errors. A recruiter looks at that and they just think they haven't even cared to put in a decent amount of effort into this resume. They probably don't care about the job. Obviously, it might not be true, but definitely pay attention to that. And one thing that a lot of people don't do, but is really beneficial, make your resume, give it to a friend, ask 5 friends to review your resume. And you will find they will pick up a lot of things that will make it much better. I did that and it made my resume miles better. Yeah. And it doesn't cost you anything. You just ask a friend for help.
The roasting is worth it. 100% worth it. Yeah. And just a really quick thing I wanted to mention. I feel like even saying maximum 2 pages is pushing it. Like, recruiters barely even read the first page. Like, if you can, I think it's pretty important to make sure you put it into 1 page. Like, I feel like 2 pages is even too much. Like, just seeing 2 pages makes me go like, oh my God, what could they possibly have that make it worth 2 pages? So just keep that in mind.
All right. But again, look, to this person, whoever it is, look, everyone has a starting point, and I can see this is actually a very good starting point for you to reach out. You got a lot of advices from us. Make some changes, show it to another friend. I remember like I would show my resumes to a lot of like my friends, my mentors, a lot of colleagues at work, especially before I was applying for internships, to get their feedback. And the feedback I got, it was really, really crucial. My resume changed dramatically from what I had to what it became after their feedback. So Rohil made a really, really good point there. Cool beans.
Great. I think it's all valuable insight and all really helpful in terms of building your resume and getting some strong key points out there. Zach, would you like to do the honors? We have time to take 2 questions from the audience, so let's go ahead with that.
Yep, so this is for the second half of the session. So the top voted question is, I find it rather difficult to think of ideas for personal projects because it feels like everything has already been done before. How do you think of ideas?
I think that when you start doing one thing, you don't just come up with ideas on like, oh, this is a cool idea, maybe I could do that. I feel like as you learn and read and explore, even if you're going through a university subject and you think, hey, maybe I could make a project for this. And eventually, as you're making the project, you come up with more ideas. So an example of this would be when I was learning about TCP and computer systems, and I was wondering if I could make like a abstract model of how TCP works and just how internet protocols and stuff work. And then eventually from that, I was like, oh, I wonder if I could make abstract models of how DDoS attacks happen. And basically, I'm actually using that project to present at a security workshop later on this week with my lecturer. So like eventually, I think it's just important to start with one thing. I don't think you should get too caught on with thinking about, oh, I wonder how many people have done this before. So like Rohil's idea, for example, if like, I don't know, like three years ago, if somebody went like, oh, I wonder if I could make an automatic time scheduler, there would have been so many people saying, oh, that's already been done. It's not that hard to make. But the thing is that the level of detail and commitment he put into it made it stand out so much, and so many students use it now that and he's still working on it, that it's just a really good product. So it's not necessarily just about the idea, but your commitment and your consistency, your level of detail, and just how much work you put into it that also makes it stand out. So don't get too caught up with, oh, is this a unique idea? Because it probably, many people have probably thought of the idea, but how many people actually commit to it and put in the level of detail that people like Rohil, for example, do? So just start out with something, find ideas, don't be afraid to think about ideas, and then if you find something that's cool, do it and commit to it. I think that's what's most important.
Awesome. I could definitely add on to that, Aisha. And Aisha pointed out something that I mentioned before, but I didn't go into it. I said, look ahead, it was better than anything that had been done before. And that's because there was a timetable optimization tool that had existed. If anyone remembers it, it's by a guy named Ruarai Tobin. And it existed before I even thought about creating a web app to do it. But when I looked at it, the feature set, I said, okay, it's cool, but I could do better. I could improve on it. And I created mine, and it eventually like surpassed his creation because it had more features. It was a better user interface, things like that. So just because someone's made something doesn't mean that you can't make it as well. And even if they have made it, and even if you think it's better than anything you can do, it doesn't mean that you making it won't impress the recruiters as well, right? Just because you created something that already exists. Now, there are 2 people that have created something. Now, the recruiter probably doesn't even know about that other creation. So just because someone has created something doesn't mean you can't do it, and it won't benefit you. Imagine if like Deliveroo saw Uber Eats existed and they were like, oh no, I can't create a meal delivery service, or any of the other competitors. Don't limit yourself like that. And you'll still, gain a lot of insights and stuff from the creation process, even if it has been made before.
Yeah, just to add on that, like, I think hackathons and different competitions really force you to implement something. So I definitely would encourage that. Like, because hackathons often means you'll have a team and it's just over a period of, like, let's say a couple of days, and they even have a theme. I personally have seen that projects get way more done for myself when I'm participating in a hackathon, and a lot of my, let's say, top projects are result of those hackathons. That's one aspect. The second aspect is something especially I did a lot when I was a beginner is following a tutorial and doing something is not like, it's not a crime. That doesn't mean you can't put it in your resume. If it's a good enough or something you're proud of, or that took you like quite a bit of time to do it, as long as you didn't copy paste the code and got the results, you understood and did the things properly, it's completely fine, especially at a beginner stage, to follow someone's tutorial and do it. Even now, there's so many aspects of cybersecurity I don't know. I often watch YouTube walkthroughs on it and then do it myself. And that is a big learning experience. And do I still put them up in my resume or LinkedIn? 100%.
Cool, great insights from all three speakers again. I think the second question is a bit vague. Do you know what it could mean? How do you find these opportunities, or should I go with this question?
Yeah, it's a big vague because we touched quite a few different topics.
Yeah.
Is there a time thing there anywhere? Not. So
No. We can just go with this for now then. The question is, for someone who has just gained an interest in code and all associated fields, what is the best thing I can do right now with only 2 languages under my belt?
Keep improving.
Yeah, there's not much to say. Like Rohil said, he didn't start learning web development until he started doing his project. Just like do stuff. Yeah, Kaif, do you have anything to add?
I would strictly say don't let the number of languages actually really mean something for you. Have one. It's really important to know one language very good than being able to write hello world in 6 different languages. That doesn't mean anything. Once you know ins and outs of a language, it's really important, really easy to learn a new language and get used to it, because most of them follow the same sort of mind map and patterns. Unless you're doing Haskell or something like that, then you're pretty much screwed. So, but in general, when you know a language very well, that's actually going to be really useful. Like what a mistake I did was learning a lot of different, not necessarily a mistake, but I learned a lot of things since when I was a kid and not necessarily go in depth with it. But what I started doing in university, pick 1 or 2 languages and actually go deep inside them. Like I can do so many things rather than the basic, like let's say a console application with Python now. Can you do that? That actually is a make or break, and that sort of leads you into doing all those projects. And yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Great.
I think Rohil wants to say something.
Yeah, sure, please.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say, like, just like knowing a language or having 2 languages under your belt is very vague. Like, what does that mean? You have it under your belt, or I know a language. Do you know the basics? How good are you at that language? Because I can tell you that even after, head tutoring Java for a semester, teaching it for 2 others, there's still so much I don't know about it, and how it can be applied in a like industrial situation. So there's always room for improvement, and you can't just say, oh, I know 2 languages. Do I learn more languages or something like that? You can always keep building and innovating with that language. And definitely depth is much more important than breadth when it comes to programming languages.
Fantastic. Well, that was very, very insightful, and it covered a lot of topics. To conclude, since we're in the last part, I would just like to give you guys and the audience members a story that my mentor gave me. There was this boy running along the beach, running along the shore of a beach, and he sees 1,000 starfish lay ahead. He sees an old man in the end, and so he runs to that old man. He says, "Grandpa, hey, listen, what are you doing?" The grandpa simply bent down, picked up a starfish and threw it back into the sea. So the small boy says, hey, listen, you know you can't make a difference to all of them, right? He simply bends down, picks up a starfish, throws it back into the sea, and he says, hey, I at least made a difference to that one. Just like that, you panelist members, you made a difference to every single one of us in the audience, and we thank you for it. And to the audience members, a big thank you from the DSE team, because this is our biggest event so far, and it's only because you've made it that way. We've covered a lot of topics throughout this entire course of 1.5 hours, and most of which, in fact, all of which I think is really helpful and really drives me to do something a lot better than I did, or than what I knew just 1.5 hours ago. So thank you so much to the panelist members and to the audience.
I'd say that was a very good story, and that basically summarizes what we were trying to do here very well. My final thoughts would be, do it. This whole job, this whole career, this everything, this might look a lot big, a lot scary, and at times it is. Do it with a friend. I wouldn't be where I am or whatever I am without my friends or the support I had. I remember I practiced the whole interview season with Aisha and Peter, and it was really fun. I made like really good friends through this, and the journey you share is what's more important, and it's best to share the journey with someone rather than taking it alone. So have a few motivated friends, surround yourself with a few motivated people, and the difference they'll make on you is, from my experience, is phenomenal. Thank you, everyone.
Just like to say thank you, Kaif and Aisha, and to the audience members. I have written about the software interview process and Australia's software engineering graduate scene. I'm going to put a link to my blog in the chat, and it goes through a lot more than we could touch on today. Like, we've touched on a lot of the formative aspects of that job searching process and, networking, stuff like that. But even once you get into that interview pipeline, there are things like coding tests and behavioral interviews that you have to be prepared for. And preparation is something that I think a lot of people don't do enough of. So definitely take a read of that. People who have read it have messaged me and told me it's insightful. And feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. I think we're all receptive to that, and just to meet new people. Cool.
I was featured on the blog, by the way.
Oh yeah, in the Google part.
I was the intern that slept at the office.
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kaif and Rohil, for your stories, and it was really inspiring to hear all of you. And thank you to the organizers for organizing this and making us part of a really cool community. It's really nice to see everybody. I think the main takeaway for everybody should be, things aren't really as difficult as they seem, and people are just people, so don't be intimidated by anybody. Learn to be inspired by people, learn to find specific things that inspire you and learn from that. Everybody is just people who struggle, and I think it's important to remember that when you feel like things are really difficult, even if you feel like you don't fit a particular role, do it anyway. The current job that I have right now, I had 0 React experience, and I learned React in 2 days, and I built a demo for them, and I still got the job. So it's really just do stuff even when you feel like you don't fit the particular role. Things aren't as scary as they seem, and even if they are, it shouldn't stop you. And I really hope everybody has a really fulfilling career, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. We can help you as much as we can. And yeah, thank you for coming.
Feel free to reach out, guys. Thank you.
Great, guys. I think that was it. And thank you so much for attending once again, and have a great day.
See ya.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.